And if something goes wrong in a household, I think first place you got to look is at the husband. And even though, like I said, everything I said, like, there is the equality of workmanship together between the husband and wife, but the husband is still the head, and the husband does bear the burden of the house. So if you see a house that's not in order, you got to look at the husband first before anybody else. I just want to say that really quick. Now I can move on. All right. I want to try to wrap this up within the next 2 weeks, if I could. Depends where I get today, if I can. So, Lori, I'll let you know by the end of today if I'll be 2 more weeks or what. All right, I'm going to start in chapter 19, like we've been doing, in verse 15. Laziness casts one into deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. He who keeps the commandment keeps his soul, but he who is careless of his ways will die. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. Being the Lord will pay back. Yeah. Excuse me a second.
Sorry, can I ask you to read that all over again?
Mm-hmm. I'll slow it down a second. All right, let me start in verse 15 again. Laziness casts one into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. He who keeps the commandment keeps his soul, but he who is careless of his ways will die. He who has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. That is verse 15 through 17. And I'm going to start in verse 15, where laziness, I think in the King James Version, it's slothfulness, slothful.
Yeah.
So slothful, you get that word. I have a really dry mouth right now, so excuse me. Slothful, I think of what I did, I thought of the sloth. Everybody, has anybody ever seen a picture of the sloth? I kind of went through and I started looking it up, and thank God for YouTube, because I was able to look up a bunch of videos of the sloth, and it's pretty interesting animal. And I just wrote down a bunch of facts on it, and I want to get through a couple other things about the sloth. The sloth lives in trees, and it eats in trees, and it mates in trees, and it has babies in trees. It always stays up in a tree. The only time it comes down is to relieve itself, to go to the bathroom, and it goes to the bathroom right at the bottom of the same tree. Same position every time. It always goes to the same spot. Doesn't go far. Same spot every time. And then once it's done, it goes back up into it swims, and it goes back up into the tree. And a sloth moves. I got different conflicting, as I was looking up different websites. They had conflicting information, and it was anywhere between 6 feet and 13 feet per minute. So I mean, 6 feet is maybe 3 chairs, maybe at the most. Per minute is so, and then you look it up, and it only has 25% of muscle in its body. It's very low muscle. It eats leaves, which are very they're not, you don't get a lot of nutrition out of the leaves. So that I think maybe that's why something to do with the way the sloth is nutrients that it receives. It doesn't receive nutrients that gives it energy. And it takes about a month to digest its food, and it relieves itself once a week. It'll relieve itself, and it's got bugs that grow in it. It's a really gross animal. It's got bugs that grow in it, and it inhabitants of like I think it's like cockroaches and beetles and stuff, and it has algae that grows on it. So it's a very dirty type of animal. I mean, but I looked at the pictures of it, and the pictures of it made me laugh, because every picture you look at of a sloth in all these facial pictures, they all look like it's smiling. It's got this like goofy face on it. It's just pretty funny the way it looks. And when it moves, it looks like it would be like an upright animal, if you look at it, but it never gets really, all the pictures I saw, it doesn't actually like stand up and walk. It almost like a crawl where the arms come way over like that and it kind of pulls itself forward. The legs, same thing with the legs, it's a really nasty animal. But
God made it.
yeah, God made it, but I mean, it's just a gross looking animal. And I think he made it for us to look at, and because he uses it in there about being, so much things about being slothful and lazy. I mean, that's probably why he made it to, you want to look like this? Now I got into slothful, and when you do things, slothful is very lazy. This verse, it's laziness and idle. Now, when you're lazy, when you do something lazily, you do it like half-heartedly, very slow, very, but you're actually doing something. But you're doing, really I don't care attitude. You ever go to a store and have a customer service that's actually like really horrible, or like a waitress? I like, Elise likes the waitresses. The waitresses that have horrible attitudes, very slow. And when I go to a restaurant, I want to have my food pretty much on time. I don't want to sit there while the waitresses are in the back talking and jibber-jabbing. Yeah, but that's the attitude you have, is a slothful, very lazy attitude. But then I think as an idle person doesn't even do anything. An idle person sits there and thinks about, well, what can I do today? He gets up out of bed. What can I do today? Yeah, what can I do today? And sits there and just thinks about what to do, but never actually even does it. And that's where I kind of, because I said, why does he have these two words together? And I think that's what it is. You're a lazy person, and it says a lazy person casts one to a deep sleep, but an idle person will suffer hunger. So if you don't move, you're not going to eat. And if you're lazy, and if somebody's lazy, they have that lazy attitude, and you just get tiresome. If you have a lazy attitude all the time, I don't know if you've ever seen people who are lazy. They seem to be tired all the time. They don't have that energy or consumption of any kind of ambition. And then I got here. It's like reading the word. If you read the word lazily, you're going to sleep and you're not going to get anything out of it. You're going to read it, and it happens to everybody. You just read the word, and it's just word on the paper, and you just read it and you're done, and you're not getting anything out of it. And that puts you to sleep. And but if you don't read your word at all, you're not even. If you look at your Bible, it says, "Oh, I'm not going to do that today." You're not even getting anything at all. So you're not getting any kind of. You're just malnutrition at all. You're not even eating anything at all. And that's what I was looking at by the word. And then I got here Colossians 3:23, and it says, "Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working to the Lord, not as human masters." And that's how I perceive myself at work. When I do stuff at work, I do it everything. Go ahead. No. Before I go ahead.
I've seen two sides to that coin of laziness.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the laziness, slothfulness, but then I've seen people that are in such a hurry just to get the thing done. Half-heartedly, don't care, sloppy work, but they're just...
Yeah.
And I think that's a form of laziness, but only...
Just to get it done.
Yeah, on a different scale, you know?
Yeah. It's funny because chapter 19 opens up with don't be hasty, and then ends up here, don't be lazy. So there's got to be a midpoint in there where you're not rushing to do stuff, but you're not being lazy about it. And that midpoint is perfection. That's where you get. That's just the scripture right here. Do everything as you're doing unto the Lord. And when you do something to God, you're doing everything you do with perfection.
That's right.
And if we work that way, that's how I tend to work. I want to do everything unto God. And at work, everything that goes out of my shop has my name and my association on it. So if something comes back that my customer knows it's me that's doing it, so it's going to make me look bad if I put a bad part out.
It's your reputation.
It's my reputation, exactly. Then you got here Proverbs 10:4. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands brings wealth. Then I got Proverbs 13:4. A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of a diligent are fully satisfied. We got to be diligent in all we do. We can't. And like I said, it's not just. It's in life itself. It's not just at work. It's not just reading the word. It's being who you are. If you don't live a diligent life, if people see you as lazy and they know you're Christians, or serve Christ, they're going to say, well, how can you serve Christ and be lazy? Or is that what I want? Mm-hmm. All right, I want to go to verse 16. Verse 16, who he keeps the commandments keeps his soul, but he who is careless of his ways will die. I want to go to Deuteronomy 6. Starting in verse 1. Now this is the great commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which your Lord God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord your God, keep all his statutes and his commandments which I command you. You and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Therefore hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly as the Lord of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. So that's it right there. If you obey his stuff, you enter into the promised land. And I want to conjunction that with John 15. Hope I have that right. Verse 9. 9? Sorry. As the Father loved me, I also have loved you. I'm going to try to change it to a different version. Sorry. Okay. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I just lost it. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. And it goes on to say, you are my friends if you do what I command you. No longer will I call you servants, because you are my friends if you... Let me start that again. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. And then it goes on to say, I will no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know the master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Yes. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you might go and be fruitful, a fruit that will last, so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. And the last thing is my command is to love each other. Now, I found that interesting. When back in Deuteronomy, the whole thing was, do my commands that you may be fruitful and multiply. Yeah. And then this right here says, he says the same thing right here. Wherever it was, but he was talking about, right, I have chosen you to appoint you so you might go and be fruitful, and a fruit that will last. So that's part of his command. If we love one another, that I believe that's going to be not only fruitful for us, but it's going to be fruitful for the next generation. And that's where his command is. It says, love each other. Lay our life down for our brother, or our, they call it friend, but I say our brother. And let us lay our lives down for one another, putting down our selfish things, putting down our thoughts and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we could drive ourselves crazy thinking about what each other has done wrong for each other, yeah. But we got to come to that point. Well, we got to lay our own thoughts down and lift our brother up.
Yeah.
And I think that's where all that love. I think that's where all that love comes in. I love Amy. I mean, I'm not going to do wrong to her. If you love somebody, you're going to make sure that they're lifted up, and that's how you show it, is by lifting them up. Yeah. You can't love somebody and put them down.
Love covers a multitude of sins. Mm-hmm.
All right, verse 17. Whoever is kind lends to the poor. I don't like this version. Sorry. I read it at home and I read different, and it gets me a different thought pattern. Whoever has pity on the poor lends to the Lord, and he will pay back what he has given. Now, God doesn't, we always talk about that. God doesn't give back if I gave Brother Bud $1, God's not going to pay me back $1 for what he's given. God pays back what? 100-fold. So yeah. If I give Brother Bud $1, God's going to give me back, not just financially, but I'm saying, I'm just using that as an expression. So if we get a mindset that
so give me at least 100.
To give you at least 100, it's true. If you expect a blessing back, how much we put into God is how much you're going to get back out of God.
Yeah. Right.
So if we put in 10 minutes worth of reading to God, God's going to give us back 100 minutes worth of Him. How much do we want back?
Yeah.
It's funny. We were just talking about that. Huh? Oh yeah, I wasn't thinking that. But now that you. You got to come in the same mind again.
Yeah.
There's the program here. But that's funny. I'll mention that though. Nate, we get up every morning and we read, and Nate usually gets up and he'll read in his room. I go downstairs. Me and Amy are downstairs reading. He'll read in his room, and he'll come down afterward and he reads the book that you gave him. He'll read that for a few minutes too. So one morning he comes downstairs and he says, I says, did you read? He says, yeah. He says, I read whatever it was he was reading, Genesis or Hebrews. He says, I read verse whatever. I says, just one verse? He's like, yeah. He says, that's all I really wanted to read. He says, I'm going to read this other book for a while. And I says, tomorrow when you get up for breakfast, I says, I'm going to give you a crumb. And he's like, what do you mean?
Hope that satisfies.
Yes, I said, I'm going to give you a crumb for breakfast. And he's like, all right, I don't like breakfast anyway. I says, well, that's for the rest of the day. You have a crumb. He says, well, I'll be hungry then. I says, well, what are you going to do with the word? I says, what about your spirit? I says, you're giving your spirit a crumb for the day. I says, how's that going to work out? He says, but he says, I don't actually eat. He says, I don't actually eat the Bible. I says, but your spirit does. Your spirit eats the word. So the next morning he gets up. Oh, I read chapter whatever it was. I do. I think about it all the time. I come up here and I talk about Victoria, but Nate's just as good. He's a great kid. Everybody knows that. What's that? Yeah, just a little partial. Just spend a day with him and you'll realize how good he is. No, I lost my. Oh, the other thing I was thinking about. Sorry, that until Amy interrupted me.
I don't know, it's been a good bat, or else she wouldn't have interrupted you.
I forget where I was going. Oh well, that's gonna be. Yeah, that's it's gonna be. I guess it was just for me. I was at where was I in that verse 17? Yeah, he was pitying the Lord. I want to go to 2 Corinthians. Chapter 9, verse 6. But I say this, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. This is what I was just saying. And he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity. For God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always having all sufficiency in all things may have an abundance for every good work. And that's exactly what I just said. Whatever you give out is what you're going to get back. So
Yeah.
if you live your life giving 10% of your life, you're going to get back 100%, or I should say percent because that's not right. If you go out giving tenfold, whatever you give out, you're going to get you're going to get back. You get back 100. God gives you back 100-fold. But how much of that 100-fold do you want? You want 10% of $1, or 100% of $1, 100% of $100? I'm just using money because everybody knows money. Same thing with time. You want 10% of your time. God, and I believe God will prolong your days too. If you
Amen.
If you give more of your life, God's going to give you more life. How long of a life do you want to live? And I know some of us want to live longer than others. I'm sure about that. It's true. I mean, what kind of life you live is how long you want to live.
Right. Some people despair of life.
What's that?
Some people despair of life.
Yeah, that's true. I want to. I see the time. I want to kind of just skip along in this pretty quick. I want to skip up to. Let me get. This is where I want to get. Okay, I want to skip up because I want to end this. I'm going to try to end this next week, and so I'm going to skip up to these next 3 verses. This is where my heart has really been. So it says I'm going to start in verse 18 of Proverbs, in Proverbs 19, starting in verse 18. Chasing your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. That's a powerful thing.
Yeah, I know.
A man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you rescue him, he will have to do it again. Huh. And I like I think it's NIV says, a man of hot-tempered. Yeah, this is, yeah, hot-tempered person.
Yeah. Yeah. God.
These are a few powerful scriptures right here. Okay, a hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again and again.
Yeah.
Listen to the advice
right.
and accept discipline. And at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Many plans are in a person's heart, but the Lord's purpose prevails. And then I want to end with in 22, I want to combine all these together. What a person desires is unfailing love. Better to be poor than a liar. Now I start with discipline your children, and that's basically these. I think all these sit together. My heart was right at that point there. Discipline your children.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible talks so much, just in Proverbs, about disciplining, sparing the rod. I mean, when you think about sparing the rod, I mean, you think about sparing the rod is spanking your kids. And we had to do that when we were raised. We don't do it now. I mean, there's a way to raise your kids. When they were young, you'd have to spank them on the butt or spank them or whatever, and send.
Establish your authority.
Yeah, but as they got older, you start disciplining them in different ways, and there's still and they learned when they were young that they get disciplined. When they were young, you had to spank them because they couldn't know anything else, and that shows an authority thing. But now, I mean, if I were to spank Nate, he would get hurt, but it's not the same effect.
Yeah, right.
But I just want to throw these. There's a few scriptures here about. These are just, I think, all in Proverbs only. It says, "Whoever spares the rod hates their." Now this is powerful. Whoever spares the rod hates their children.
Yeah.
But the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. I mean, you got to love your kid. They always say when you spank your kid, you feel bad. And I remember doing when I was when the kids were, not when I was little, but when the kids were little, you'd spank them, you send them up to the room, and you felt. I know I did. I felt bad that you had to do it. And there's a lot. And one thing you got to do, you make sure you do, is you can't discipline your kids in anger. And I've done that many a time, where you get upset that they do something and you spank them or you yell at them, you discipline them there. That's out of anger, and you can't discipline your kids like that, and because they know they know the spirit behind. They can sense the spirit behind
Absolutely.
That's what you impart.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you impart that anger, and you impart that doesn't become discipline. That becomes fear.
Yeah.
They begin to fear you instead of being fear in a bad way, not fear in a subjective way, but a fear in a fearful way. And if your kids ever fear you, you're lost. You're lost. You can't. I mean, God's able to restore it, but you can't have a relationship where your kids fear you. And I remember I've done that. I remember one story. I think I was just telling somebody this lately. We went to the kids were young. Nate was probably around. He was probably around 4 or 5 or so. Maybe about that age. And we went down to New York. We went to a museum down there. And the kids, when they were young, they're always, because of Amy was at home with them all the time, they were always more close with Amy. We went out. They always wanted to be with Amy a lot. And I remember one time we went out. We were at the museum in New York, and Nate. It was really, New York is always crowded. So I held Nate's hand, and Victoria was with Amy, and Nate started crying that he wanted to be with Amy. And I don't know why this story sticks in my heart, but Nate started crying that he wanted to be with Amy, and I wouldn't relent. I just kept on, and I held his hand the whole time. He's screaming and crying, and he's throwing his fit, and that became, right at that point, it became a pride issue. Well, you're going to stay with me, and that's it. And I just and that became an issue, and it was my pride behind it. Maybe that's why I still stuck in my head. And I could have just easily, and what I should have done was easily just, I mean, who cares? He wants to be with Amy. Let him walk with Amy. And that was a wrong in my part, where I just took that hard discipline and made him, and that made the day horrible. I mean, for me, it made the rest of my day horrible. Spending that whatever how long it lasted, but the rest of my day was I remember it being not a good day. It just put something deep within me. And we just can't, and ever since then, I think about that, and if we can't discipline, and that was out of anger. That wasn't a loving discipline.
Chris, I got to read that, the two verses that you just read, 18 and 19, out of the Amplified. I'm looking in there as you're reading it, and I had a note. It says, read it out of the Amplified. And it says, discipline your son while there is hope, but do not, and then in parentheses, indulge your angry resentments by undue chastisements, and set yourself to his ruin. A man of great wrath shall suffer the penalty, for if you deliver him from the consequences, he will feel free to cause you to do it again. But that first part really, really stuck out. You were sharing that story, and I just thought of just one of my own experiences, but I had told somebody this. I said about my own dad. He didn't do everything perfect, obviously, but by any stretch. But there was one thing he always set in my brother and I, which was, I run the show here. And when I'm not home, she runs the show, my mother. So basically, if you wouldn't do it if I was here, don't even try it if she's here, because if I find out when I come home, there'll be consequences. And it wasn't in the fear that you were talking about, but he established an authority and an awe of that sense of saying, I'm the one in charge here. I get the final say. If you're somewhere else, you know what I mean? One day out from under my roof, you go ahead and do as you please. That's between you and the Lord. But while you're here under my roof, and you don't necessarily understand that, obviously, younger, you're getting older, you're in your teenage years, and you see it a little more, but it's not until you're out and you're away and you start to realize he instilled that in a positive way, which I respect him now a whole lot more than I did back then, in realizing when you're enduring that. Did we get spanked? Yeah, we occasionally did. Probably Josh more than I did. But, I mean, hey. I say that kidding. I say that jokingly. But there was a point to that was, when he did, there was another thing he did. He generally, when there was a consequence for something we did, he would come after the aftermath of the situation, and he would talk. Yep. And he would explain and say, do you understand why this happened? Do you understand why? Taking that time was the key to keeping the respect. So just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, that's so true. We do that too. I remember doing that before with the kids. You gotta let them know why they're getting disciplined. I mean, they know they did something wrong, but you got to see it in your heart too, and let them know what your heart is in the whole situation, and not just disciplining them because you got to discipline them. Barry.
Yeah, we had teachers come in that were really good, and what they taught us was you never discipline out of anger. Mm-hmm. You always discipline after you're angry. So in other words, when Matt misbehaved and it was time, I said, go to your room. I said, you know what's coming. Yeah. So.
That's the worst part for him.
No, it's worse for him.
The anticipation.
But I was mad, and he did not want me going up there mad. Yeah. So you don't let him stew, okay? You go up there as soon as you can, you calm down, you go up and you sit, and I'd say, you know what you did, Matt? And he goes, yes. I'll say, okay, you know what's coming. So, and by the way, we were taught never discipline with your hand, because your hand reach out to love them. And you reach out for them, they may go like this later. Because, spoons. We had a paddle called Tweety. Had Tweety Bird on it. By the way, he has that paddle now for his kids. But I would discipline him, and then I would say, I love you, and I made him say, I love you back to me. And when I was done, he didn't stay in his room. He came back and be part of the family again. Mm-hmm. Okay? That's
very good.
Yeah, but that's part of that. Never discipline out of anger. Yeah. You have to discipline because you'll ruin your child if you don't. Yeah, but never do it out of anger, and always tell them you love them later.
Make them say it back. because
Yeah.
sometimes they're angry and they won't
Right.
say it. I
It
love
breaks
you.
something when you make them
I
say
love
it to you.
Yeah, you do. I love you.
It is, but it's well worth it. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far away. 23:13. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with the rod, if you punish them with the rod, they will not die. 23:14. Punish them with the rod and save them from death. 29:15. A rod and a reprimand impart wisdom, but a child left undisciplined disgraces its mother. 29:17. Discipline your children, and they will give you peace. They will bring you the delights you desire. Now, me and Amy, I think we did a pretty good job. But that discipline is a very necessity. And I remember when I was young, I remember my father spanked me one time from 4 years old. I mean, before 4, I have no memory of it, so I can't say if he did or not. Probably not. But I remember one time he spanked me, and it was for some. He was angry because something else had happened, so he. So I got disciplined for that. But that was one time in my life. My mother, I can't count on everybody's fingers on here, and that was my fault. I mean, but my mother, she was short. She was 5'6" or so, I don't know, and she would get right in my face, and she would, and she did. I mean, she was, and with my brother too, she always disciplined us, and look at the fruit that it's bore. At least in my life, look at the fruit that it's bore, and she would, and she was more concerned that we would go a wayward way, not as a believer or not, because at that point she wasn't a believer, but as far as our lifestyle, living a wayward lifestyle, there was things that she didn't want us to do. And I remember one time. Now I don't know why I'm telling you guys all this, but one time I was 13 years old, and remember this is way before, so you guys can't. This is before Christ, so. And I was 13 years old. We were living in New York still, and I had gotten a cigarette from my somebody, I think it's a friend of mine or whatever, gave me a cigarette to smoke. So I'm walking home from school. I'm in junior high school, and I'm smoking this cigarette, which is I probably smoked in my lifetime probably 3 of them, I guess. I don't know. And I was smoking a cigarette, and my cousins, they were younger. They're about 10 years younger than I. No, they couldn't have been. They're probably about 8 or so. And they come up, and they saw me smoking a cigarette. So, and my mother used to babysit them after they got out of school. So, I was out. Yeah, it travels really fast, especially with little kids. So I get home from school, and they were home before that. So my mother says to me, "Oh, I heard you were smoking." So right away I saw the kids, and I knew they had told her. So she took. She took whatever she could. She took a chair, and she hit me with a chair. Now this, yeah, probably too much. She took and hit me with a chair, and she pushed me against this wall. And I don't know where her strength came. I was 13, and I was always a bigger kid. I mean, I was never scrawny. So she took and she pushed me against this wall. Boom. Well, there's a pegboard on there with thumbtacks on it, and I probably still have a scar on my back, and the thing went right through my back, a thumbtack. But that's what she did, and she did what she had to do, and yeah, she did. I mean, I'm glad she did. I'm glad she look at hindsight. I mean, she did what she had to do, and she knew what she didn't want out of us, and To put a little background there, she's never smoked because my grandfather died from lung cancer. So she knew that that's what her association was with, and she knew that she didn't want us in that path. So my mother, she was always, I mean, like I said, she would get in my, and forget if I try to block, if she would do it and I would go like that, she would say, "What, are you trying to hit me?" And she would, yeah, but that's the way she was, and I thank God that she was like that. I mean, if she wasn't the way she was, I would have been able to walk a lot freer, and things that I shouldn't have walked in, and because I had a fear of mom in me that I didn't, and even being out in the world, I knew my limits where I couldn't do because I would have suffered her wrath when I got home, and that's the way. I mean, we got to be that way. Even nowadays, we got to take that, and that put that authority in her over me, and that's the same way we have to be with our family. We have to keep that authority over us, where the kids won't want to do something because they're scared. Amen. And that's the way it is. But like I said before, though, we can't leave a fear in our kids. We have to keep that open where we have and that's where she's like. But I mean, I can't compare that. But that's where we know nowadays we can't have the fear in them, but that godly fear inside them. And that's why I come to one end. That. Thanks to everybody.